You're listening to the JORNI Podcast. In today's episode, we meet an interspecies healer and we dive into the world of animal-assisted therapy. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the JORNI Podcast. Hi, Charlotte Erika. Welcome to the JORNI Podcast, and thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you very much.
How is the weather doing in England?
We are about to experience a really hot heat wave. So, up into the 40 Celsius, they're saying at the end of the week. So everybody's getting prepared. So
oh boy,
hopefully not too hot for our pets.
Yes.
That's the only thing.
That's always a scary time when it's so hot and you have animals in your home. They tend to not love that too much.
No, not at all.
So we have a super interesting topic today in the space of animal health and healing and how that relates to our own mental health. And I'm excited that you are here to talk about that. So let's get started. So we mentioned animal health and healing. And can you explain to our listeners what that means or what that looks like so they can get an idea about that?
Yeah, so I'm an animal healer and communicator, but I also study how it works in relation to how animals help humans and vice versa. So we all have a symbiotic relationship with our pets and what I would call companion animals. I prefer to use that term, and we would be classed as guardians of those companion animals. But generally people use the term pets because that's what people understand. So I like to enrich the lives of animals through helping their humans help them, if that makes sense. So helping pets through their humans being empowered to find out about how they can help them physically, emotionally, and spiritually even. So supporting them through their life with the best quality of life and optimum health and well-being.
Wow. And I can imagine that a lot of listeners can identify with that. There's a lot of companion animal owners all over the world. I mean, not just dogs and cats, but all sorts of animals. And I find that really interesting how you got into that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you found this path?
Yeah, so my first ever dog I got in my 20s. I always had sort of animals around me. So I had rabbits when I was younger and chickens, but I've never had a dog or a cat. And I adopted this dog when I was living in Ireland in my 20s. I had a career there. And he came into my life in actually a very interesting way. I saw him being walked by his guardian down the canal, and I wanted a dog like him. And I said to my friend, could I go and ask him where he got his dog from? And I was like really sort of shy about it. And my friend was like, yeah, you should find out. So I approached this guy and I said, where did you get your puppy from? Because I would like a puppy and I want to make sure that it comes from a really good breeder. And he said, well, actually, he is a local dog, but I actually have to give him up because I'm moving to a house that doesn't take dogs. And he was like, well, I was supposed to be advertising him in the paper, but I wasn't able to because I really wouldn't know if he went to a really good home. So, and then he turned around to me and he said, would you take him? Wow. And so I wasn't really prepared at all for that. Right. And then he said, God is looking down on me today that I found someone who I know and I can trust who would take him and be a good owner to him and be a good guardian. So I went and met this puppy a few times, and then he came into my home, and that's where the story started, really. So Bruce, I discovered over a course of some years, was a healer himself. And we actually, I registered him as a therapy dog, and we went to a nursing home because I knew that that would be the environment that he would work best in, because he wasn't too keen on the kids. He was a very old soul. So I took him to a nursing home for 18 months, and we had amazing stories that happened in that nursing home. And that's where I really saw how he's a healer and how he helped the people who he went and visited. And then it was the case that he was getting elderly, and he was getting to about, I think it was 10 years old, where I saw signs of him becoming quite ill. So we did investigations, and he developed inflammatory bowel disease.
Wow.
So I nursed him I went down the allopathic route of veterinary care, nursed him for 4 months. And in the end, it was like I had to say, well, enough is enough. He's struggling. So I had to let him go. But during that time, it was evident that he was actually telling me that I should become a healer myself. So I used to get these messages. I used to get ringing in my ears constantly. I would smell incense when I didn't even have any incense in the house, and that went on for about 3 or 4 weeks. I had already been interested in sort of healing and what people would generally term alternative sort of therapies. And so I contacted my teacher. I had already gone to some sort of classes about healing, and she told me that this was his message to tell me that I should come and do the Reiki training. And I still wasn't prepared and ready to go to it. So then the next messages had to be a bit more abrupt. So I had dogs literally dragging their owners across the street on the lead. And they would come up to me, these dogs, and they would sit on my feet, their back to me, and then look straight up at me. And I would be like, oh, you just want a pat. And then I would take my hands off, and they would stare back up at me, and they would be, no, I need your hands on me now. And so I that was my little message that I got. And so I put my hands back on the dog. And then often enough, the dogs would relax, and some of them would even go and fall asleep or lie down. And the guardians would be like, what have you done to my dog? As in, they're so relaxed. Often they're really, really anxious. That's amazing. How did you do that? And I was there going, I don't really know. So then I phoned up my teacher again, and she said, yeah, that's a sign that you need to do this healing. Bruce is telling you need to become a healer. So as soon as I committed, all that ringing in my ears disappeared in seconds, and the smell of incense disappeared, and I knew I was on the right track.
So it sounds like you really found your calling through Bruce. Like Bruce and yourself were meant to be coming on this path together. And I would love to know more about animal-assisted therapy, since that's what you and Bruce did together at the nursing home, right?
Yes. So that's animal-assisted therapy is where there's lots of scientific papers stating that animal-assisted therapy, and it can also be called interventions, is wonderful and so beneficial for humans, for our emotional well-being predominantly, for our mental well-being, but also on a spiritual and even a physical level, because it is known that it reduces cholesterol if you're petting a dog or a cat. It increases the dopamine levels, the happy hormones, the oxytocin. There is a Swedish scientific paper from 2017 by Pearson et al., and it's actually its title is Oxytocin and Cholesterol Level in Dog Owners and Their Dogs. And what they did was they measured the blood pressure and the actual hormonal levels within the blood tests that they took of both dogs and their guardians, their humans. And it was discovered that the cortisol stress levels went down in both dog and owner, and the actual dopamine, happy hormones, plus the oxytocin went up for both parties. So it just shows how amazing connection we have with animals, and especially dogs, with this study. The other thing about it was that they actually did CT scans on the actual dogs. They trained the dogs up to be, to not be scared of the CT scan.
Because that makes a lot of noise.
Yes, exactly. And they put them in, and they could actually visually see that how the oxytocin was released within the brain, which is amazing, fascinating. Yeah. And that was done with their interactions with their guardians. So vice versa, because we have this symbiosis, we are basically keeping each other well in all matter of ways, whether it's physically or mentally.
So you mentioned before about cats and dogs, and also in the study that you talked about. And does this work only with cats and dogs, or does this also work with other companion animals, say like horses, for example, or smaller animals like hamsters or rabbits?
Yeah, so it works with all animals. So animal-assisted therapy, I know of, most people would know of dogs being animal-assisted therapy dogs, but it works with the small animals as well. So I've known of people who have little rats as animal-assisted therapy rats, and also like birds. And I also know someone who specifically takes reptiles to a psychiatric hospital. And there's been studies done that for some reason that these reptiles actually really help the people in that type of hospital, which is really interesting, I find. But in general, horses and dogs are actually the ones that were first studied in relation to animal-assisted therapy. So the studies have been done for maybe 20, 30 years in relation to them. And the first ones ever studied were actually to do with horses and how horses can help people, because they are fight or flight animals, and they work so closely with humans and their emotions. So I suppose they were easy to study. So that's why they started with horses, because they could actually see the reactions of the horses and how they would try and calm someone down, for instance, as an example. And then you could see how that helped that person to actually bring calmness into their life going forward, because the idea of animal-assisted therapy would be that you would do like a course over the period of at least once every 6 weeks. So you can actually, it's like a therapy in itself. That's what it is in the name. So it's like going to a counsellor or a therapist yourself weekly or whatever. So instead of seeing a human on the couch, you would go and see a horse or a dog. So it's quite interesting.
Wow. So obviously, since you just mentioned this is kind of like a therapy, there is a way then that you can utilize animal-assisted therapy to help with mental health and also with sadness, depression, anxiety, and stress. Like, could that be incorporated into the healing journey as well?
Very much so, yes. And even studies have shown that people who are elderly and lonely, and they feel that they're lacking in their lives because they are just on their own. To have a little animal with them, generally they say, well, a cat or a dog. A dog is an amazing companion, because obviously it also will get them out the house. So there's this thing about incorporating other things into it. So there's so many elements that would help mental health journey and emotional bereavement effectively of whether it's of a human or losing the person you once were, but through illness, things like that. Going out, meeting people, they encourage, everybody speaks to someone with a dog. So it gives you that confidence to go out and speak to people. It's the fact that you're out walking, so you're doing physical exercise and movement, which is, we all know, is very good for general health and mental health and depression. And also the other thing that I'm interested in is ecotherapy. So it comes from Japan, predominantly, the studies relating to, I don't know if you know of what's called forest bathing. I don't know if you've heard that term.
I think I've heard of that before, where people also spend more time in nature, or specifically parts of nature like a forest, to help their own connection and balancing out their system. Is that sort of what you're referring to?
That's exactly what it is. And what's great about it is that you don't have to go on your own. You can go with your companion. You can go with your dog. And as we see when dogs are out, that walk is the biggest and best thing in their day. If we see them and they're running around, as soon as the W word is said, then jumping up and saying, yeah, let's go. So they encourage us to go as well. There's often times where I felt that I didn't really want to go outside. And that encouragement from my dog actually made me realize that actually when I was outside, I was feeling better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would definitely help with mental health and also with physical health. Like you said, you'll be moving more.
Yeah.
So if listeners are interested in adding animal-assisted therapy to their healing journey, how can you work with them over the internet, for example? Like, is that a possibility, or do they have to be physically where you are?
So that is a part of my sort of journey, in that I actually want it to be accessible for all. And I have been working face-to-face, so one-to-one work and also group work. But I would really love to bring this to the internet and online and to maybe reach people around the world. So if anybody's interested, I would really like them to come get in contact with me and let me know, and I could see if I could put something together. I've already started, but haven't got there yet fully. So it would be lovely to hear from people if they are interested.
Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic idea, because there's many animal companion owners out there, I'm sure, that are looking to add this to their therapy journey and maybe might not have the access where they are locally to actually get in touch with someone who does that. So following that, we will be linking all of Charlotte Erika's offerings that she has on her website in the show notes, so that if you want to get in touch with her, you will know where to find her. And you can try out the journey of animal-assisted therapy online with her. So this has been another amazing episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed the journey into animal health and healing as much as I have. I love pets of all sorts, so this has been such a fantastic episode. And it was great chatting with you on the podcast, Charlotte Erika. Thank you again so much for your time and for your wisdom. There were so many things that you touched on that were so interesting. So thank you again, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the JORNI podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a review. And be sure to get your copy of our brand new ebook called Break Free. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week. Until then, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and the JORNI blog.